Welcome to the Amazing Authorities Podcast, where game changers, visionaries, and category leaders share how they built their brands, platforms, and global influence. Your host is Mitch Carson, international speaker, media strategist, and creator of the Instant Authority System. If you're ready to learn from those who've done it and want to become the go-to expert in your space, you're in the right place.
David, I'm so happy you're here for the show today. You're an amazing authority. You've got grit in your background, and you're a gritty person. And I'll say it on behalf of all the listeners. Thank you for your years of service. I happen to come from a long line of military in my background, all the way back to the Civil War. I'm the only person that never served in my lineage. So I want to say that on behalf. I certainly have a soft spot for people who serve. And welcome to the show today.
Well, thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me. I am kind of the exact opposite. On my father's side, there was not the history of service, and I was the first one to enter service and go to West Point, and then I served for 24 years in the Army. But yeah, complete opposite of you.
Wow. Well, West Point, what did that teach you? I know General Schwarzkopf went to West Point.
Yeah. So actually, it was great. General Schwarzkopf came back from Desert Storm. I was there as a cadet. I think I was a sophomore or maybe a junior at the time when he came back to speak, and he gave this huge rousing speech in front of all the 4,000 cadets of the Corps, and he opens it up for Q&A, and we had just triumphed in Desert Storm. He opens it up for Q&A, and like the second guy stands up and goes, "Sir, I don't really have a question other than, would you meet me down at the bar for a beer after the show?" And Storm and Norman goes, "Sure." And then, after the show, after the thing's over, troops down there and has a beer with this guy. And so,
Wow.
he became a legend amongst the Corps, like, oh, he's a 4-star general, but he'll come down and have a beer with the firstie that asked him.
Wow. Well, that's impressive. And he spoke at an event I was attending in LA, and a very service-oriented guy, because he saw some servicemen in the audience. I was at a large event at the LA, where was it? Not the Staples Center, the Fabulous Forum. That was where the Lakers used to play. And he was there, and there were a couple service guys, I think they were privates in the Army, were there in the audience, and he noticed them, and he said, "Boys, come on up here." And he brought them up on the stage and shook their hands, and they saluted him. And, he wasn't in uniform. This is after his days, but he recognized his servicemen. I thought, man, that's a cool guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He interestingly, he had a kind of a reputation in the Army before Desert Storm of being a tough guy to work for.
Okay.
The Storm and Norman was because he was a little bit rough around the edges, and he wasn't exactly the soft, cuddly kind of guy that you would say, "Oh, it was great working for Schwarzkopf." But
probably learned a ton, though.
Yeah, yeah.
And you didn't have to. You never were under his report.
No, by the time I commissioned in '93, I think he had already retired and moved into civilian life. He might have been still hanging around for like one more year, but he wasn't in the same location that I was at that point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how did you come up with the grit concept? And I know there's a certain amount of toughness. I mean, to get into West Point is no small undertaking.
Yeah. So in March of 2020, I founded my company, the Fivecoat Consulting Group, or TFCG for short. I do not recommend that for the entrepreneurs out there to found a business on the cusp of COVID. There were some very lean months out there, and one of the things that I tell to all the small business owners, and I'm sure you're part of this, and I think we'll echo it, that as a guy that got a check from the government, my employer, from age 18 to 40 something, twice a month, it is a huge thing to stand up your own business, and you don't know where the next check is coming from. And I
Oh,
did not
buddy.
understand the risk tolerance that small business owners have to have. I joke with my ex-Army buddies that it's more scary running your own business than it is jumping out of a plane, because the Army has all these protocols and stuff that goes around jumping out of the plane, and when you jump out into the small business world, you don't have any of that safety net around you.
Yeah, and there's
But
no parachute, is there?
right, there's no parachute. And a lot of times, you don't know what you're doing that's actually working. And sometimes you don't know what you're doing that's actually inhibiting your business, because, you're doing marketing and you're not getting any clients. And then all of a sudden a whole bunch of clients come in, but they came in maybe in a sideways manner, which I'm sure you got speaking gigs that way, that you had no idea why that person reached out to you and said, "Hey, we want you to come talk to 1,000 people." It's the same way in my business, that I sometimes feel like I don't know exactly what I'm doing. But I stuck it out. The first 6 months were super lean, and the only way I could handle it mentally to stand up the business was to say, "Hey, I'm going to do this for 1 year." And at that point, I would have lost some money and stuff like that. But if it didn't turn out, that's okay. I'll go do something else. And lo and behold, at about 6 months in, all of a sudden some contracts rolled in for some business consulting, and then eventually some coaching. And it just started building on itself. And I was blogging. I was blogging twice a week on leadership topics and some other things that would just interest me, and I would blog on it. And eventually I was talking to a client, and she said, and I kind of had this, I'd always had this idea that I wanted to write a book, but I was struggling to put something together. And this woman who I thought wanted some business consulting said, "Hey, you're kind of gritty. Why don't you write a book on grit?" And I was like, "Huh, that's a pretty good idea." And so I started playing around with it. I actually test drove, I think, 15 out of the 20 chapters as blog posts. And so I put them out there. I will freely admit I stole that from Andy Weir. Andy Weir is the guy that wrote The Martian, the great movie with is it
Matt
Yes,
Dillon? Not Matt Bellin, Matt Damon.
Matt Damon as the astronaut that gets stranded on Mars, which I thought was a great metaphor for trying to get through the early days of COVID. Like, all of a sudden we're stuck on Mars and we got to figure this thing out. But anyway, I wrote the book. I ended up publishing it in July of 21. I also would not recommend trying to publish a book in 9 months. It was a tight timeline and required a lot of late nights in order to get that book edited and out in the world.
I've written quite a few books myself. Let me ask a couple questions in that regard, because it's a lot of the people that listen to the podcast are authors. And it's one of the things I do is teach people how to write a book.
Yeah.
Did you go the traditional publishing route, or did you self-publish on Amazon, KDP?
So I self-published on Amazon on KDP. What I did was I paid for a company out of Atlanta as a handholder, basically. They helped format, design the cover, and a few other odds and ends, but it was about as low as cost as you can find and very low maintenance. I paid for an editor. I found a woman out in the state of Washington that did a phenomenal job with it. I test drove it with some beta readers.
All right, you were thorough.
I didn't know that there were professional indexers out there, so I actually paid for a professional indexer to index it after it got in the almost final form. And then I published it as an ebook, a softcover, and a hardcover. If I had to do it over again, about 2 years later, I found a guy. I'm a big fan of Fiverr. I don't know if you are.
I use them all the time.
But I found a guy on Fiverr to read the book, and I published it as an audiobook like 2 years, like in 23 or 24, because I had some clients say, "Oh, we drive a lot. We really love your book as an audiobook. Why don't you have it as an audiobook? So I
Smart.
published it late. So I recommend anybody that's going to publish it, start out and just do all four formats and get it out that way. Don't wait on the audiobook.
No, I agree. And here's an interesting stat, and I dig into this. Audiobooks have higher consumption, even though they're only about 9% of the total sales of books today.
Mhm.
They have the highest consumption, meaning if you buy an audiobook, there's a 90% plus chance of consuming it, meaning listening to it, taking the content in, versus someone who buys an ebook is about a 5% reader consumption. So if you do the math, you get a higher actual total consumption, net consumption of an audiobook over a written book. And isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And the trend is going up. More people are consuming. And I think it's largely because of podcasts. It's also getting people more educated and comfortable in taking in information auditorily versus reading. I like both.
Right.
Even though I'm a podcaster and I listen to it, I still like reading. I like formal newspapers, and I'm showing my age now, but it's a preference, but an audiobook is so important today and continues to climb year over year.
Yeah. I will also say that if your book really has an impact on somebody and they listen to it audio wise, they also will tend to go back and buy the hard copy.
Yes.
If the audio is the entry into your book, they will go back and buy the hard copy because they want to go in and take notes because they remember some of it, but it doesn't sink in as much off the audiobook as it does off reading it.
How about your sales with regard to your audiobook?
I don't think I've broken even yet on the audiobook sales. I think so I read somewhere when I published in 21 that the average book in the United States sold 400 copies.
That's about right.
When I sold 401, I'm like, yes, I'm above average. And so I think I'm closing in on 2,000 copies of all genres or all formats. I've done a couple speaking gigs where the whole place has bought it, and so that's helped the sales. It's been fine. I tell folks, I'm not gonna be able to retire off of it, but
no,
it's nice to get that check for $18 and maybe you can, go to Chick-fil-A or something like that.
There you go, and a Starbucks, maybe.
Yeah.
I think they're about $8 for a good coffee, and then that's fantastic. Now, the book is a legitimizer for you. Did you feel it was a necessary arrow in your quiver?
It certainly has provided credibility. When I will say that I have struggled to figure out what book number 2 is. And I have a goal for 2026 to publish book number 2, which is I significantly pivoted my business in 24. So one of the main thing that I do now is I like to take leaders and organizations on what I call the leadership journey. And for me, the leadership journey involves starting out with, I like to use the Hogan assessment, which is like Myers-Briggs or the DISC. And we provide an hour worth of feedback to that executive that talks about what their strengths and gaps are as a leader. And then if the group wants, we can roll up the numbers of the entire organization and talk a little bit about some general trends on where the organization might have some strengths and gaps and how they, approach business. For instance, I was just up in Atlanta with this group, and they are a data-driven decision-making organization. There are very few individuals in that organization that make it off gut or intuition. And so it's just fascinating that almost the entire group of 15 executives that we gave feedback to, I would say 90% of them were data-driven decision makers. And so,
boy, would they be fun to hang out with.
Well, it is a bunch of engineers, and so they were also,
that's what I was saying.
Also, as you would expect, most of them were introverted. The joke I always like is, how do you tell the extroverted engineer they stare at your shoes when they're talking to you rather than their own shoes?
Oh
Um,
gosh, that's funny.
um, so anyway, leadership journey starts out with the Hogan, and then I like to take folks to battlefields or other historic sites as a way to present other ideas on how to lead people outside of that organization. And then I like to follow it up with some coaching, either group coaching or individual coaching on the back end, to try to lock in some of those changes that we're trying to make with those individuals as leaders. And so that's the thing. So book number 2 is going to be a book called Atomic Leadership: Lessons from the Manhattan Project. Um, and
That's
so I've done
fantastic. I
a
like Atomic because of Atomic Habits. That
right. I
that
like it
it's a
too.
little bit, yeah, it's you're gaining a little bit of piggybacking a little bit on a 20 million copy bestseller, New York Times
Right.
bestseller. And you know,
Right.
it's interesting, and I'm going to offer this tip for people to listen to, and I'll do a cheat to get for ideation purposes. And I've done this with my own books and with clients. If you drop the PDF into Chat GPT, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and
Yeah.
say, I'm interested in creating a series, because an author who writes in a series is much more well received than a one book offer. It's a
Yep.
one hit wonder, and it'll spit out a whole series for you of ideas. So the ideation is done for you with a robot, and this robot
Yeah.
is magnificent. I wish I
Yeah.
married a robot. There would have never been a fight. But for ideation purposes for books and
Yeah.
courses, it give then you obviously put in your human element to teach. That's just a thought, David, is
Yeah.
use that, and it's just here's my PDF. It'll say computing, and it's doing its thing, and then it'll give you a whole series of opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I have it would be book 3 and book 4 teed up. One is going to, and I'm still debating on which one to do in which order, but we'll say for right now, book 3 is Turning Point: Leadership Lessons from Gettysburg, and book
uh
4 is Overlord: Leadership Lessons from D-Day.
oh,
Those are
nice.
already teed up.
I like those, all about being an American, being a
Yep.
retired colonel, right? You're in the
Yep.
colonel in the army.
Yes.
And I think that's great. All American significant wars, not going back to Sun Tzu. I mean, you're not
Right.
Chinese looking at all. I mean, maybe you had some plastic surgery, I don't know. But that wouldn't tie to your cultural heritage.
Right.
And
Right.
that's nice. Okay, so Gettysburg, even you could put a whole series together on the Civil War. What did George Washington do?
Yep.
And not
I,
not for the Civil War, for the July 4th we're coming up on very quickly
yeah.
here. But I
Yep.
think that's
I
a great idea for you.
Yeah, yeah, and frankly, I've written. So when the clients come to the battlefield, they get
Mm,
a 70 to 80 page PDF right now. We do spiral bound, nice covers. It's
hmm
got places for leadership notes, but that foundation, after I have done a bunch of programs with real clients, is going to end up as eventually the book. And so I've done atomic leadership now with at least 5 or 6 different clients. I've done Gettysburg with 3 this year. I've got 2 Normandy programs coming up in September. And so I'm test driving it in real life. I will update it based off of the feedback from the real live people. And then we're going to eventually go to print with those.
I love it. I love it. No, those are great. So what was the grittiest experience you've had over the last year?
Well, I will talk about failure. So
Good topic.
I, I'm a cyclist. Um, there's a big race in the fall in North Georgia, and you would not think Georgia it has a lot of mountains, but in North Georgia, you've got the tail end of the Appalachians, and they have this bike race up there called Six Gap, which is 100 miles and 10,000 feet of climbing. So
Okay.
it's a serious day on the bike. Um, and I got out into it, and I hadn't slept well the night before, and I got out about so it's six gaps because there's six iconic climbs, and I got through the first two climbs, and I'm like, if I keep pressing on, I'm not gonna finish, and I'm gonna, I could tell my body was like, hey, I'm gonna sort of, blow up and not end up on the side of the road or something like that. And so, in the you know, I turned it around and rode back and made it back. I ended up doing 60 or 70 miles and about 6,000 feet of climbing, but I didn't complete what I started out to do, which of course, irritates me as a person that likes to see things through and likes to accomplish things and stuff like that. But that was in October of last year. And so I'll be back up in Six Gap this fall, trying to give it another shot.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, cycling, that certainly is gritty. And what's the longest cycling event you have participated in?
There was a 107-mile event up in, so the tallest mountain east of the Mississippi is called Mount Mitchell. It's about
Okay.
6,000 feet. That was 107 miles and like 12,000 feet of climbing. You end up at the top of Mount Mitchell, and then they bust you down. That's the longest one I've done.
Wow. Well, I mean, isn't that what an Ironman is? Has one component of that, doesn't it? 112
So an
miles.
Ironman has 100. It's 112 miles on the bike. I've done a couple of half Ironmans, which is 1.2 swimming, 56 bike, and 13 run. But those are long days too.
Yeah, my knees hurt already, even thinking about it. My gosh. Yeah, the running part would be the challenge for me. But the
Yeah.
others, yeah, it could be done. It's a lot of fun.
Well, what have you done gritty in the last year?
Oh gosh. In the last year, well, physically, I mean, I had a little bit of a challenge last year before that, but I would say the grittiest in a physical was, long walks because my knees are shot from my
Your
years
fighting
on
days.
the pro karate circuit, and I've really
Yeah.
banged my knee. Both of them need to be replaced at some point. So I have to be a little bit careful. But I would say the physical challenges of aging and being able to deal with that. I didn't see it coming, and all of a sudden it came. A lot of physical breakdowns and getting through that, pushing through, and then keeping my mindset to where I'm still young here. And I think if this goes south, the body follows. Now, part of it is biology and can't fight Mother Nature, but I also see a lot of men my age in particular, once they retire, they expire. And because when they aren't challenged mentally or they give up and then it's checkers in the park, so to speak,
Yeah.
the will to live dissipates. And I think if you don't keep your mind strong, your body will fall. Now, I had some
Right.
failings with my body because I wasn't eating right and I don't drink or smoke, as I had shared with you before we started
Yeah.
this morning. But I think you have to keep this intact.
Yeah.
I think that's part of and routines. I was going to ask you, what are your routines / rituals to stay on track? And I'll share mine too after because I think
Yeah.
we probably have a lot more in common than we know.
Well, I am a ritual and habit kind of person. I don't know if the military, you know, the military certainly encouraged that. I don't know if it
Mhm.
exacerbated it or it just cultivated what was already there. But so every night I make a checklist of what I need to do the next day. And so I have
Okay.
my to-do list.
Check. Same here.
And I make little boxes, and if I complete it, I get to exit. If I only get it halfway done, I get to circle the box.
Do you do it
Uh,
manually or is it on the computer?
I do it on a moleskin notebook.
Same
And
here. Physical.
every day gets a new page, and sometimes Saturday and Sunday will be on the same page because I don't get that much stuff done. But I also try to get up every day at 5:30 in the morning. I have a 7-year-old dog that she and I I get a cup of coffee. I get up, I get a cup of coffee, I get a banana, and then me and Samantha head out the door. Samantha's my dog,
Right.
for at least a 2-mile walk.
Oh,
And
nice.
so come back in and do that. Most days, I do some push-ups and sit-ups as part of the morning routine, and then eat breakfast, and then either get into work or we'll eventually get a bike ride in at some point in time during the day.
Okay. So you
Um,
do that. You do have the bike ride.
yeah,
That's your piece. So no
yeah.
weights.
I have a home gym. I will say that this year I was much better last year at hitting the home gym at least once a week. I have not been as good this year, but I still do my push-ups and sit-ups. I do some air squats. I do some planks. It's enough to keep sharp. Oh, and the other thing is on streaks, like we talked about earlier. In the morning, I will inevitably do Wordle because my daughter got us into doing Wordle, and I will share the results with her, which I think,
What's
you know, and
Wordle? I'm not aware of that.
Wordle is a game on the New York Times. You can play
Oh,
it for free. They have a streak on it. It starts out it's a 5-letter word, and you get 6 guesses at it. And so the first guess I always play is a do. I play the same thing every day because you get the A, the I, the E, and the U all in that. And then you've got a pretty good shot at getting the vowel if you don't get
okay.
anything, and then you get 6 guesses to try to find it. And then if you don't find it in 6 guesses, you lose your streak. And so um, I'm a creature habit and a big believer that those streaks are the way that we accomplish things and get things done. And my to-do list energizes me and the company every day, and I I don't like to not check things off, which I think you're kind of the same way.
Yeah, mine is get up at 4 a.m. because I'm in Asia and I have American guests. So my first interview is at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. No, 5 a.m. Thailand time, which is depending on the time of year, uh, either 11 hours difference or 14 hours difference, and
Yeah.
also where in the U.S. somebody is. So I wake up at 4, get myself fixed up, ready to go. I also meditate every morning for 5 minutes and every night before I expire. And I also look at my to-do list, just as you described. And I use that. Some people use spirituality, either praying or meditating. I was going to ask you if you do either of those. Does that set your mind right? Do you practice any of that?
So I have meditated at various points in time, and I
Mm,
will use the idea of focusing in on your breathing as a way to relax myself. Whether I'm trying to go to sleep or whatever. I think for me, a lot of the long distance cycling ends
that's
up
meditative.
being a version of meditation. There are days most days I consume podcasts on the walk with the dog, but there are days when I don't. And those days are, you know, I would call them de facto meditation days because you're out there and you're just, you're thinking about the sun, the sunrise and oh my gosh, what's going on here and stuff. And so those days help me, clear the mind and be ready to have a productive day.
I think that's fantastic. My also inviolate rule, and it comes probably because of my discipline background being a martial artist, is I make sure my bed is made every day, no matter what. My toilet bowl is clean, no matter what. My sink is clean every day, no matter what. Small things like that keep me in my lane. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it'll just be sloppy.
Right. I'm also a big fan of making the bed every morning. I clean the house on Fridays. Friday morning
Okay.
it typically is house cleaning time. Change the sheets, vacuum, clean the bathroom, all that. We're both creatures of habit.
Oh, and I think habits lead to success. And
Yeah.
success leaves clues. So who's inspired you most? You can pick a couple people.
Well, so I will say the person that I you know have have spent time with a lot. So I worked for 2.5 years for General Dave Petraeus while I was in the Army. For me, he was an inspirational person. I loved working for him. We're both competitive, and he would always kind of raise the bar in a good in what I saw as a good way, and was never satisfied with just enough. And so I definitely found him as the person that I worked with, and on a daily basis for 2 years. He was an inspirational guy for me.
And what is your target market? Who can you help the best, David?
So I tend so I will say that for the leadership journey, the target market are businesses below about $100 million a year that don't have dedicated L&D departments. And we can come in and help fulfill some of that ideas of how to build leaders. I, I don't do a great job of teaching tactical skills like running a P&L or filling out there's things like that you can pay other folks to do. But if you want to help build leaders in your company that are actually going to help in the end improve your ROI, that's the kind of group that we do. I will say that bigger companies, Fortune 500 companies, or folks that are traded on the New York Stock Exchange, sometimes like to take their folks to battlefields to present a different idea, and we're happy to do that as a one-off because they have their own L&D department and they're doing a bunch of Hogan assessments or whatever as part of that, and we're happy to do that as a one-off. But what we see our sweet spot is those $100 million and less companies that don't have an L&D department.
What's the minimum typically that would use $1 million in revenue, 5 million in revenue, like just to understand your sweet spot?
Yeah, so to just so to bring 12 people to Gettysburg for the training and the logistics, and the logistics are the room, the food, the bus, the books, and everything else. It's about a $55,000 investment for 2.5 days. And so for 12 people, sorry, I'm a history major. I can't divide that fast enough in what that equals out to. But
about 5,000.
Yeah, about $5,000. And so I think it's valuable. I think it's one of those leadership training events. You're not only going to get the teamwork of bringing folks to a different place and getting folks to see folks in a different environment, but they're also going to remember some of the leadership stories, because you have this wonderful historic story arc of this 3-day battle at Gettysburg that has these larger than life characters of Lee and Meade and Stuart and Custer, and they'll go, oh, that's what Lee did at Gettysburg, and that's why this isn't working in the company. Or, oh yeah, that's what Buford did, and we need more folks like Buford in this organization. And so some of that stuff becomes shorthand in the company for a leadership technique or leadership approach that they need to have.
Okay. So usually 12 is about your sweet spot, 12 leaders who are looking to take up their game in leadership.
Well, that's what we price it out as the start point. If you want to bring less than 12, but I'm going to charge you for 12. So, and then I will charge you more than that if you bring up to 20. We like to use 2 facilitators, one historian and one sort of business executive. The historian will tell the military side of it, and then we'll segue to the business executive that will then bring in the leadership lesson and apply it to what they're seeing in their company. And that tag team, I think, is good and helps get a good discussion going. Typically, the business executive has done it a bunch, and so they've been to they tend to know the history about as well as the military guy. But it's a good tag team between the 2 folks working with this group of 12 executives and throwing different ideas out there to get them to think about leading folks a little bit differently.
Love it. So how do people get in touch with you, David, if they want to up their game for our target market? Because there will be people looking into hiring you, hiring your company.
Would love to talk to anybody. We'll talk to anybody about military history or leadership or grit. But the best place to find me is at the website for the company, which is the fivecoatconsultinggroup.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. They can find me there. They can find the company on LinkedIn. That's where we have most of our social media presence right now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your time today, and looking forward to helping you with your next book. When it does launch, we'll have you back for sure.
All right. I'm gonna take you up on that, Mitch.
I love to feature authors. So, and they can find your book on Amazon as well.
Yes. The book's out on Amazon, and like I said, it's all for not genres, but platforms. Yeah.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, David.
No, thank you for having me, Mitch. I really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed getting to know you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Amazing Authorities Podcast. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more experts like you rise to the top. For behind-the-scenes access and free resources to boost your authority, head to mitchcarson.com. Until next time, stay amazing.